living in Virginia, you're in the fast lane on the information superhighway. We've invested $3 billion in Virginia's broadband network to give you one of the fastest internet connection speeds in the world, so you can build relationships, bring new business to our state, and meet the future of education. It's amazing what we can do together. Visit VCTA.com to learn how broadband connects the Commonwealth.
From the General Assembly and the City of Richmond, I'm Woody Evans for Cable Reports, brought to you by the VCTA Broadband Association and Comcast, connecting Virginians to their government. We're so pleased to have Senator John Edwards, new chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Congratulations,
sir. Thank you, appreciate it.
Lots of different things this session. You have a majority in the Senate,
we
21
do.
to 19.
Makes all the difference in the world, that's right.
Talk to us about some of the changes there as a result.
Well, we're calling it the Judiciary Committee now, and I'm the new chair. And we have 9 Democrats and 6 Republicans. It's just like they did when they were in charge. And we're making a lot of progress on a whole variety of areas. Some of the things we're doing, like last year, for example, we widened 81. We call it the 81 fix. I-81's been the most unreliable interstate. Because you never know when there's going to be a problem on 81. You cannot predict it. Like in Northern Virginia, they have commuter traffic, but they know when the commuting problems exist. And so they can plan their day around the problems. You can't plan your day around I-81 because when there's a crash or somebody pulled over to the side, it blocks traffic. And so it's what we call it unreliable. So we had to do something, and the governor came down last year, and doing the veto session, and we came up with a pretty good idea of how to fix I-81 and also get the rest of the state to help us. And so one of the things we did, there's some truck rates that we could raise. It's an international truck exchange consortium, really, with other states. Including Canada as well, so it's international. And it's kind of a voluntary thing on the part of the trucks, and they agreed to raise the rates on some of the truck traffic. In addition, we had a 2.1% increase in the traffic on I-81, on the I-81 corridor. But in order to do that, though, we had to get the rest of the state to help us, and so they got $200 million out of the $280 million altogether, but we got another $60 million on that 2.1% for I-81 alone, in addition to another $190 million of the rest of the state. So we got quite a bit of money for I-81. We need more. It's going to help for the $2 billion in needs that are imminent, but not the $4 billion that we need altogether to fix I-81. So we did that. This year, putting in a bill to help the rural areas. See, the I-81 fix was only for the interstates throughout the state, not for the rural areas. So I put in a bill to have 2.1%, exactly the same as everybody along the I-81 corridor and the other interstate corridors, and to make sure the rural areas also get fixed. And so the rural areas have the same kind of problems anybody else has with the roads. And so hopefully that will help solve that problem this year if we can get the bill passed, and I think we probably can. So again, it's the fact that we have a majority in the House and the Senate, and I think that's a good opportunity to get it done this year.
And I believe the governor has made a proposal in terms of an increased gas tax writ large,
right,
given the reduction in revenues from the gas tax based upon the efficiency of cars and trucks.
Well, that's right. But one of the things we need to do, and it's not in the governor's bill, is to talk about the future, electric vehicles, for example. How do you, if more people have electric vehicles, they're not going to pay the gas tax because they're not going to need gas. And so I'm coming up with an idea to go ahead and raise the registration fee, for example, of electric vehicles, in a way that is doable over a period of time, so that when more and more people have electric vehicles and are not paying the gas tax, they will also pay for the roads as well. So we're looking into that. That's a futuristic idea, but it's coming pretty quickly. In 10 years' time, I don't know how many electric vehicles there will be, but a whole lot more than we have today. And so we got to plan for that in the future, and that's something I'm looking into.
And one of the other alternative suggestions is to base that upon mileage. That seems to be a little bit more complicated, though.
Yeah, the mileage, vehicle mileage travel theory might work with certain newer cars. It's not going to work for the 1984 Ford Rangers, for example, and a lot of the older cars. So we're going to have to come up with a plan to do that.
What about rail? I know you've been a big proponent of rail to Christiansburg, for example, and other places.
Well, we got Amtrak to Roanoke in 2017. I've been working like the Dickens to try to get Amtrak to Christiansburg in the New River Valley. And that's really important to the students, but also, and to people who live there, of course. And it'll be the second rail passenger train out of Roanoke, because it won't be leaving at 6:20 in the morning. It'll be leaving later that day. So we'll have 2 trains out of Roanoke. But it's also important because Virginia Tech is connected to Alexandria. They're building a campus up there because of Amazon. So the Tech-Amazon connection, you need to get from the New River Valley to Alexandria quicker than taking I-81. So it's very important as a statewide issue. I've been trying to promote that with everybody who will listen, that this is a statewide problem and we need a statewide solution. Now the problem has been Norfolk Southern is shutting down. I think the 3,500 employees they let go, about 175 employees out of Roanoke. And so their business model seems to have changed. We need to work with Norfolk Southern to make sure we can get, because their line, to fix up the line between Roanoke and Christiansburg in order for Amtrak to get started. It's something I'm working on as hard as I can. And I know there's a group of people in Blacksburg, they call themselves Rail 2020, NRV Rail 2020, New River Valley Rail 2020. And that I've been working with them very closely, and they're excited about the idea of getting Amtrak to New River Valley. In fact, we already have different models for having a depot in Christiansburg where the train will be. It's right under Franklin Street, but right outside of Christiansburg. And so we're working hard on that. The citizens are very excited about this, and I'm hoping we can get Amtrak to Christiansburg as soon as possible.
So how important is Virginia Tech to the economy of Montgomery County and Blacksburg?
It's hugely important. Virginia Tech, you know, its tentacles, good tentacles, are expanding all over the place. In the Roanoke Valley, we have the Virginia Tech School of Medicine, VTC, Virginia Tech Carilion School of Medicine, and it's been dynamite. Governor King got it started back in '08. I think we've now have our 6th or whatever graduation, not too long ago, or 7th, I can't remember. And they have about 42 students every year, something like 4,000 applications for 42 positions.
Wow.
I mean, the credentials of these students is just extraordinary, and the faculty is terrific. It's been very successful for Roanoke, and it's successful for Virginia Tech as well. And in fact, they have connection buses between Virginia Tech and Carilion because of the connection with Virginia Tech Carilion School of Medicine, in addition to the Research Institute. The Research Institute on neurology and brains and cancer, all the research.
And I think that's internationally acclaimed.
It is. They've done a tremendous job, and we're very excited. They're going to probably have, in the next several years, as many as 1,000 research scientists. I'm not sure how many they have now, but the work they're doing and the articles and professional journals, the patents they are acquiring and making application for patents, is really it's extraordinary that Roanoke is going to be right up there with the rest of the world when it comes to brain research or research into the cancer and cardiology and the whole field of medicine. It's really extraordinary and very exciting. And the people who are coming because of the Research Institute are just extraordinary people, very capable.
And of course, you've got a lot of technical research at Virginia Tech dealing with robotics, I think unmanned aerial vehicles.
Yeah, they were taking burritos on these drones from the store to your house. Yeah, a lot of work that's being done on robotics, a lot of with regard to drones and air type of research. And this is very exciting. And of course, the Transportation Research Institute is just going like gangbusters up there.
Now, you are a retired veteran. What kind of opportunities are there for veterans in Montgomery County, New River Valley?
Well, the Corps of Cadets is expanding at Virginia Tech. It's really over 1,200 or something like that this year. And I've been working with them to get additional funding and so forth. So we're very proud of the Corps of Cadets at Virginia Tech. They've done a great job. And the opportunities, of course, we've done a lot to try to make sure veterans, when they get out, they have a job. Virginia Veterans Care, Virginia Veterans Program, Virginia Veterans Service Organization has programs to try to make sure veterans do have a job. And a lot of the work that they do is in the military is transferable to the private sector. And we're making sure that we're trying to help veterans get jobs that they can use in the civilian world that they were doing in the military.
It's been a very significant issue throughout the state, but more so in your district, dealing with the Mountain Valley Pipeline. It's been a lot of litigation, a lot of ups and downs. Where does that stand now, and where do you stand?
Well, they say they're 95% completed. I'm not sure that's true. The problem with the Mountain Valley Pipeline is the environment and how it affects the environment. I've told the governor, I've met with him, and my feeling is, based on PhD doctors, people like hydrologists. There was a hydrologist with a PhD that I brought to see the governor a couple of years ago, and he can't do it. The slope of the mountains is too steep to build a pipeline through without causing sediment to go down into the rivers and streams and the well waters. And that's the problem. It's going to be, I'm hoping it doesn't go forward. It looks like they're pushing it forward. But the Fourth Circuit, U.S. Court of Appeals, has had stops. There have been other different kind of stops and stays. And so they've slowed it down quite a bit. The cost has gone up dramatically for the pipeline. But I don't think you can do it safely from an environmental standpoint because of the fact that the slopes are too steep. You cannot stop when it rains the sediment and soil going downhill and into the streams and messing and causing serious problems with regard to the water systems. That's just one of the problems. And then, of course, you have species, endangered species. That's an issue. But the main thing, in my opinion, is just the environmental damage it's causing to the area, not to the larger region, from West Virginia and across the mountains and under the Parkway and through the Appalachian Trail and all the rest. So I'm concerned, very concerned, and the people in my area are mostly strongly opposed to the pipeline.
There have been some environmental justice issues as well. I don't believe it's in your district, but the Union Hill Compressor Station, for example, has raised those
That's
issues.
right, in Appomattox, in that area. That's right.
Talk to us a little bit more about what supports the economy in your district. I know there's a lot of tourism there as well, is there not?
Healthcare is the biggest thing.
The biggest thing.
It's grown. I mean, Korean health system has grown dramatically, and 10,000 employees, I believe it is. It's been a huge benefit to our region. The number of people they brought in, and of course providing health care. You know, between, let's say, Charlottesville and UVA, and Bowman Gray and Winston-Salem and Duke, there's Roanoke. There's a Korean health system. There's, of course, the School of Medicine and Research Institute. So we're very proud of what Korean has done. And of course, we have Lewis Gale as well. It's a very important hospital system, and it's an HCA hospital. And so more and more people are taking courses in the whole field, different fields of medicine, from, you know, whether it be PAs and nurses, nurse practitioners, to doctors, and people doing research in the field of of medicine. So Roanoke has become, somebody said, from a train town to a brain town. And it really is attracting some tremendous citizens. People love living in Roanoke, by the way. It's just a great place to live with the greenways that people can walk on. People take bicycles to work, for example, and I think that's the same thing in Blacksburg as well. People take bicycles a lot. So it's the type of people who are attracted to the Roanoke area, often young people who are interested in the environment, interested in the outdoors. We have Smith Mountain Lake nearby, of course, the Blue Ridge Parkway, the Appalachian Trail. So we're very, very fortunate in the kind of place we live in. Today, when you want to attract business, you want to make sure it's a good place to live. That people, what are they going to do on the weekends? What are people going to do on evenings? What kind of activities are they? People are looking for a nice place to live. It used to be they wanted just a job, and high income. Well, we think we have higher income too with the kind of jobs we're attracting, but also it's a nice place to live for families.
Healthcare costs keep rising. I know you have a great interest in that. Tell us about the legislation you have dealing with pharmacy benefit managers.
Yes, I have a bill on this to license the pharmaceutical benefit managers. These are, most people never heard of them before. The pharmacists know about them, and the pharmacists are very much behind my bill. This is what is causing, one of the reasons the price of health care and the price of pharmaceuticals are going up so much, because the relationship between the insurance companies and the pharmaceutical and the manufacturers of pharmacies and the pharmaceutical benefit managers. And the problem is it's not transparent. Nobody knows why the prices are up so high. And we studied it this summer on the Joint Commission on Healthcare, and we've come up with a bill, a couple of bills, to make sure that the price of pharmaceuticals are going down as opposed to going up. I mean, when you look at what is happening to the cost of pharmaceuticals, it's just outrageous. And again, we're trying to get to the heart of it by licensing these pharmaceutical benefit managers that are employed by insurance companies and that are working closely with the manufacturers to get the price down so that it's more reasonable. I've had more people complain about the high cost of prescription medication, whether it be brand or generic. And so we think we've figured out a way to solve that problem.
What about Medicare? I think you have some legislation.
I do have a Medigap bill. Between 62 and 65, if you're on Medicare, which you could be if you have some serious health problems, there's no Medigap in Virginia. Medigap is an insurance program that covers what Medicare doesn't cover. Well, I got a bill in that hopefully will pass this year that is a Medigap bill for those aged 62 to 65. Over 65, there's Medigap insurance you can buy to cover the difference between what Medicare pays and what what the cost of health care is. Well, the Medigap insurance is very important to an awful lot of people in that age bracket, 62 to 65.
So this would allow them to be able to purchase a Medigap policy?
Allow people to buy Medigap insurance between the 62 and 65. But again, there's no Medigap insurance available right now in most of Virginia. And so I'm hoping this will help people in that age bracket that need Medigap insurance.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I think one of the governor's proposals would have the Commonwealth create its own exchange for the purchase of policies under the Affordable Care Act.
Yeah, there's some complaints at the federal level of the exchange. We're going to create a Virginia-based exchange to help people get insurance under the Affordable Care Act.
What about crisis intervention training? I know you've been involved with that for some time.
Yeah, the Crisis Intervention Team program actually originated in the New River Valley. Victoria Cochran, former Deputy Secretary of Public Safety, she was a private attorney up in the New River Valley, put together the Crisis Intervention Team program to teach law enforcement officers to detect signs and symptoms of mental illness. Often somebody's have an encounter with the police, and the problem is they have a mental health problem. And the idea is to detect these signs and symptoms of mental illness, send them to a psychiatric ward, for example, rather than the jails. And this has helped a lot. It's helped an awful lot of people who have gotten into trouble because of schizophrenia or some kind of mental illness, maybe mental breakdown of some sort. And if these people can go into the a mental health system first, as opposed to the jails, then they avoid having to go through the jail system, and they can get treatment much quicker. And that's an idea that is spread throughout the state. I think something like 2/3 of the localities now have these crisis intervention team programs, where again, is a training program for the law enforcement officials to detect signs and symptoms of mental illness and take these people where they belong, as opposed to in the jails.
What about criminal justice reform? I know you were at one time U.S. Attorney.
Yes.
And I think you have at least a couple of bills, one dealing with parole, as I recall, one dealing with minimum maximum punishments.
Yeah, I don't think minimum maximum punishment works. The legislature shouldn't dictate what a judge can do. If you talk to judges, they don't like minimum mandatory sentencing. They want to have the option to sentence a person within the guidelines and within the maximum amount that the General Assembly has authorized. So I think we need to abolish, and I think the governor agrees, abolish minimum mandatory sentencing to the best we can. The other is, let's go back to the old parole system. It actually worked. From 1995 to the present, George Allen pushed through a no parole system. You have to serve 85% of your time before you're even eligible for parole.
85%.
85%. This has several problems. One is, since you cannot even petition for parole until you've served 85%, they're going to the governor and a request for a conditional pardon is what it's called. The governor's office is overwhelmed with these requests, and he's not set up to do that. The governor ought to be the governor. He shouldn't have to deal with all these petitions for pardon. My idea is go back, abolish the 85% rule, go back to the old system of parole. Let the parole board decide when a person should get out. Based on the old system, typically, like as your first offense, you could be eligible after 25%. You wouldn't necessarily get out. It depends on your behavior and so forth. Second offense, a third of the time, and so forth. But let the parole board set up the system, take it out of the governor's office. It saved tons of money from the Commonwealth, because we're locking people up too long in this country. The statistic is 25% of the people in the world who are locked up in prison are in the United States.
That much?
That 25% in the world, but we only have 4.4% of the world's population, which means we're up there with the worst of the worst. And I looked at a study as to how Virginia ranks with the other states. My rough calculation is about 40 out of 50 states in terms of seriousness of how long we're keeping people locked up. We're keeping them locked up too long. This is a country of second chances. Give people a chance. If you let them out on parole and they mess up, bring them back. And this is a good way to encourage people to behave, learn to behave, and learn how to behave in society, rather than locking them up for 85% of the time. It's costing the Commonwealth a ton of money. And just on the health care costs alone, geriatric parole, for example, you have people locked up in nursing homes that they don't even know why they're there because of dementia. And why are we doing this? It doesn't make any sense. So I think we need to go back to a more humane approach and let people have a chance, and let the parole board design the policies and get it out of the governor's office. He doesn't have time to deal with that, nor should he. And so we can save a lot of money. At the same time, we can do something that's more humane.
Now, what about restoration of civil rights? Because that's another process the governor has to deal with.
Well, Governor McAuliffe said that gave you your voting rights. People got their voting rights that had a little trouble with the Supreme Court, as you recall. But now the governor has to sign off on everybody who gets their voting rights, but they're doing it routinely now once you're out of prison. So getting civil rights back is something the governor has to do, and they do it fairly routinely. And because people ought to be allowed to vote. I mean, if you're not in prison anymore, you're out. You ought to at least be allowed to vote. And right up until McAuliffe, the governors were not very good at giving people their civil rights back.
What about renewable energy? I know that's something else you've been involved in.
Yes, I have been pushing solar energy. I've got several bills on this, and I've been working with groups to make sure we can expand more solar energy. Not only is it better for the economy, over time, the economy, because it's a lot cheaper in fact, the number of people who work in the solar industry is expanding, and the price is going down. The price of solar energy is a lot lower than coal, natural gas, and oil combined in terms of the average price, and it's plummeting dramatically. Plus, the number of people in the solar industry is growing. There are more people working in the solar industry throughout the country than combined coal, natural gas, and oil. And so this is the future, and of course it's better for the climate change. It's not it's no carbon emissions from solar, and so I'm pushing hard to make sure we expand solar as quickly as we can throughout the Commonwealth.
Now we're going to have a new census pretty soon.
That's right.
And of course, related to that is a constitutional amendment that passed last year that will have to be passed in identical form, as I understand it, in order for the voters to express their willingness or unwillingness to support it. Can you explain to us, first of all, what that resolution calls for and what the process is?
Well, I'm against it. I'm against the constitutional amendment. Because historically it's the legislatures that set the redistricting, along with constitutional guidelines that the Supreme Court has set, and that's the better way to do it. What this constitutional commission that would have to pass this year and be voted on by the voters next fall would do is, first of all, you'd have some retired judges appointing some people to come up with a system. And then it would be voted on up or down by the General Assembly. And then if it's voted down, the Supreme Court of Virginia hires some people to decide it. Well, I don't think too many people think that's the way it ought to be done. The Black Caucus in particular does not want the Supreme Court involved in it, and nor are the judges expert in this field. This is a complicated field of how do you do redistricting. And it's best that we do redistricting like we have in the past, through the electoral process, have the General Assembly, who are elected officials, to decide where the district should be drawn, because they know best as to the political implications. But along with constitutional guidelines, the Supreme Court of the United States has already set, making sure minorities have opportunities, for example. And we, in fact, the Democrats have won in the courts, in the federal courts, in the last couple of years. The reason we have as many African Americans in Congress, for example, and Democrats in Congress is because the 3-judge court of the federal system required redistricting. The same thing happened in the House of Delegates last year with the federal courts. So I think we're winning in the courts, and we're making progress by just letting the federal courts take these cases and make sure we follow constitutional guidelines. But I think the General Assembly has the responsibility to make that decision.
20 seconds. This session will be a success if?
Well, if we can make progress on transportation, health care, education, higher education, and the environment, and then we can win.
Great. Thank you. Good to see you, Senator John Edwards.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Cable Reports, brought to you by the VCTA Broadband Association and Comcast. Until next time, I'm Woody Evans.
Mm-hmm.